Welcome back, folks, to the final game of this EGC custom map show match between LucifroN and Kasva. We have had 4 glorious maps and 1 more to go. I'm KillerPigeon. Joining me once again to round out this series is Lidakor as we take to somewhere that sounds like somewhere I and many players who can't win make our home. The Golden Swamp designed by Kaya.
Another map that takes a lot of inspiration from a classic AoE 2 map. This is going to be one of the most intriguing and potentially the craziest map that we have seen in this entire show match. This map features an island in the middle, mostly controlling the amount of gold available on this map. So it's once again a limited gold map where you have to fight for a gold in the middle. But wait, there's a twist. Because that island is surrounded by marshlands, which is essentially a traversable terrain for both ships and units. Which means that we could actually see rare instances of land units also fighting against ships. I have some concerns about this map, but one thing that makes me positive about this one is Springolds. I think we're going to see a lot of Springolds in this one, simply because that is the only way that you can deal with ships potentially trying to deny you away from that gold. But without further ado, let's jump into game number 5 over here, the last in this 5-game show match, as we are taking a look at potential Road to Wololo custom maps.
Absolutely. And of course, shout out to all the content creators that were able to provide these maps for us to test, for us to try and actually indoctrinate into the competitive scene. They are being rewarded with $50 for whichever ones get selected for use in the Road to Wololo. And hopefully we'll be able to support the community more. Because I actually love that we're doing that, Lidakor. Because I think it's incentivizing people. Like, this is something I've always been a big fan of. Same with the modern community. I've said, I want to see tournaments ran to find good mods. I want there to be money rewarded. So people incentivize. Because a lot of time goes into doing this. A lot of tweaking happens, right? Like, it's a lot of feedback back and forth and iterative development coming out to create finally crafted maps like this. It's not something you do in just 10 or 20 minutes and then, go and watch an anime season and call it all work. Like, these guys are sweating for 10 hours plus just to make one map.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, coming up with a map idea and making a basic map script is 15 minutes probably. And then making that map script viable for competitive or ranked play, that is what takes weeks, if not months, because obviously, if the gold mine spawns, the woodline spawns, the relic spawns are not perfect, people will start complaining. So there is going to be a lot of emphasis on making sure those are balanced, and the guys in the AoE 4 map making community are working tirelessly on that. When custom maps became a reality for AoE 4, I said that to myself. I think this is the single biggest improvement to the game in the last 1 year, and it's actually going to be one of the most defining elements of new additions to competitive Age of Empires 4, because new maps mean completely new game styles or play styles. It is also going to be a factor or something to consider when it comes to tournament preparation. So some brand new people could come up and perform well in tournaments who have some good ideas for these new maps. And I think that brings in some much needed spice to the AoE 4 competitive scene, which became a tiny bit repetitive with all of the same maps being repeated from tournament to tournament.
Exactly. It keeps things fresh. Some people like that. We might go kind of, born in the 1940s all of a sudden say, I don't like things changing. I wish they were like they used to. No, I think it's fair to say, like, we as gamers can be fickle. We like change. We like evolution. Like, I, I've commentated in a game where I remember once upon a time we had the perfect patch in a MOBA with over 100 heroes. All heroes are getting picked. All items are being used. It was the best it's ever been. And then someone just walked in the room and flipped the table, right? The development was like, we need to change it because people were going to get bored. Even when something seems perfect, eventually you get sick of the perfection. And that's why I love that we're going to keep innovating and keep evolving this scene. I think it's going to help a lot. And I love to see the addition of a lot of classic AoE2 maps that really help that scene kind of spread its wings, right? And as you said, this is one that came from there. I'm not gonna lie, another one I want to see, I can't remember the name of the map, you probably know them off by heart. It's the one where all the gold is in the corners and it's like an open wasteland and all the players start in the center.
Ooh, there are quite a lot of maps like that. I think one of them that comes into my mind is a team game map called Beach Fight. I don't think I've ever seen that being played in 1v1 though.
Okay. But like these type of ideas, like it's fun to see if they're going to work. Because one thing I'll highlight, like I don't think all these maps are going to be good. Like ones that are good maps in AoE 2 aren't inherently going to be good in AoE 4 because I think the way that civilizations are balanced, there's a big asymmetrical skew. Like if you imagine that type of map with like the Mongols, right? the way that or see if the outpost rushes. Being close to their enemies would be better. So it's something we always have to think about. But I think this one's definitely it could be a good addition because, you know, you got the long away spawns. As you said, you've got to focus on the center. There's a lot of gold there. I don't know about you. Is it wrong to kind of want there to be a sacred site on that center island as well?
Interesting idea. Speaking of which, we only have 2 sacred sites out there. I could see a sacred site being there as a valuable point of interest. I don't think it's necessary, but I think it could be a nice addition just so that we have 3 sacred sites. This being said, we do have apparently an outpost rush coming in here from Kasva. He's definitely one of those guys that loves to pull those off. And you see LucifroN, he's fishing over here in the swamp. So there is definitely something to tower rush over here for Kasva. By the way, we're looking at a Mongol mirror. We haven't mentioned the civilizations yet.
Yeah.
What do you think about this civilization matchup here?
I think this civilization matchup can sometimes, like, I will be honest, like, this one is on both ends of the spectrum. It lends itself to some of the funnest mirrors to watch, but also some of the dumbest to watch. Because sometimes the match is simply decided by seed generation. And that's another thing I'm looking forward to. When we get into these competitions, when we discover new maps that can be viable for competitive play, I think one of the big things we're looking for is maps that aren't just looking like they'll be fun to play out in the early, mid, and late game, but also ones that are impartial. They don't get these random variables that screw one player completely over. And I gotta say, maybe in this generation, there was a little bit of a funky behavior where LucifroN got his stone and his gold. So maybe that's something that needs to be tweaked. But Woodlines did somewhat make up for it for LucifroN. So if we, you know, there is a lot of battling going on, admittedly, but we need to like balance the checkout of like how the map started. This clash will never end, folks. It's never-ending spears. But if you look at the starting spawns, LucifroN got a really loose spawn on his gold and his stone, whereas Kasva, I think he may have got similar, but he got double cluster at the back, but he simply chose to ignore gold completely. So maybe I was unfair at first. Maybe this is somewhat reasonable in a weird way. Yeah, so look at this. So what this is actually quite interesting. One player got double stone next to each other, and the other player got double gold next to each other. And it's kind of a reverse when you look at the other side where the stone and gold is. It's quite weird. I guess in a way you could say this is balanced, but I think this is where we talk. And I think like we've had fun with this, but maybe it's like it's taking a minute to like kind of deep dive into like map meta. This is where we talk about X is here, and thus it is unfair in this matchup. But we don't often talk about player styles and different metas, right? Like, some players will value having their stone close to the TC a lot more than their gold.
Yeah, it comes down to civilizations, it comes down to what type of playstyle you're playing. Are you playing a very defensive, like let's say you're playing French, are you playing a very defensive game with 2 town centers, you don't plan to put up that much aggression, you don't plan to face that much aggression because your opponent might also be a more passive player. In that case, a little more exposed gold mine and a safe stone mine might actually be reasonable. On the other side, if you want to put up some aggression with knights, then you need that gold mine. So there is no such thing as a perfect map generation when the civilizations are this asymmetric one. You see exactly why this map could have some interesting dynamics, because ships can actually battle land units. And this is something we have seen.
The seahorses? Yes.
Nope. This is something that we have seen in the AoE 2 version of this map as well. In fact, this map originates from a unique map called Cup, which was used first, I think, in Hidden Cup 2 back in 2019, if I can recall. That introduced this type of mechanic where you do have some central gold island and you do have this amphibious terrain essentially where you can have fishing, but you also have land units with the ability to push those fishing ships. And that essentially evolved into a map that was later added to the map pool of Age of Empires 2 that was Golden Swamp, and now we're seeing that being a conversion essentially into AoE 4 over here on our screen.
So was the original one called Cup or Kaup?
Cup. It was called Cup, just like Hidden Cup. So no, not Kaup, unfortunately.
Yeah, that would have been brilliant. Like, I really play it a lot. I just like the idea of someone having to keep saying Cup playing on Kaup. But I agree. I actually like the shallow. I did also love and adore the way, like, I didn't know if you noticed at the time when he was going to torch it, but like the way that Kasva's spearmen approached that dock and that fishing boat, it looked like they were trying to stealth attack it, like they were sneaking in. I had to point out that, like, I love that little detail. But I agree. I think this is a pretty cool way to try and interact with the naval side. It also makes it very hard for you to like cheese it, right? I think now with these type of map designs with a lot more shallow play involved, all of a sudden dock becomes a variable that isn't a necessity. Because I'm kind of getting tired of these water hybrid maps that require it, right? You have to do it, or you're just not playing the game well enough. This has been an issue with Boulder Bay. Obviously, Warring Islands we won't talk about, and Archipelago, because you have to. But
Nagari
like,
even, to a certain
yeah,
extent.
you have to, right? Like Nagari, like people try not to, but in the end, the difference between a person having fishing and a person not, even if you go multi-TC, like the cost of entry alone makes it a bad exchange.
Indeed. And one of the other upsides of this map, and this is something I'm really waiting for, is the use of demolition ships, because obviously we have been laughing about the demolition ships or boom ships for a long time, but usually what happens is that they only catch the edge of the formation on the shoreline, but this is completely different. The ships can approach those units really at point blank range. So technically, we could see a ton of demolition ships being used over here, and one of the reasons why this map could have a very visual or like from a viewer's perspective interesting upside is because you could see those highlight moments where one player leads with a big army and then suddenly one demolition ship comes in and the entire thing is wiped out.
I can't let you have that one. Lidakor. I've seen boom ships now. Like even with this map, I very much struggle. Unless a player, okay. Here's the situation where a boom ship would kill an army, even on a map like this. The player on the other side has a heart attack and just dies. Now, in that situation, the boom ship is still not the detail people. It's the fact the player died from playing Age of Empires in real life. Like, it is almost impossible to kill an army at a high level with boom ships in their current state. Don't get me wrong, old boom ships were a tad bit insane. But my god, did they make for a really, like, maybe it's the play-by-play meme. Shouty Man like really hype moments, but it really did lend itself to hype moments that I don't think we're going to see again anytime soon. Like, this is why I think I've heard a bunch of people recently saying they'd love to see what Age of Empires 4 would look like at 1.5 times speed or 2 times speed, because like, I feel like battles, very rarely do they all of a sudden switch. Do you get what I mean? Like, they don't...
Yes.
If you compare to when we have boom ships and mangonels, there isn't that clutch moment where if a player makes a mistake, you can exploit it to that level of degree anymore.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Players have gotten just so good when it comes to dodging mangonel shots, making sure they evade demolition ships and stuff like that, that indeed the game feels a little slow in their perspective. That's going to be an interesting aspect to look at things, because back in the days, that was actually a thing for Age of Empires 2 as well. Age of Empires 2 right now, I think, is played on something like 1.37 times the speed or so, but it's definitely being played more than the built-in in-game clock. So, for example, when you see that, hey, in Age of Empires 2 a game is 42 minutes time, that's actually not real time in there, because that is just the accelerated time out there. So it would actually be very interesting to see how AoE 4 would play out with a slightly more accelerated speed.
Whoa. Hold up. Wait, does that mean the game between Ruben Stark and Andre wasn't 70 hours or whatever it was long? Was I lied to? Was it shorter than it appeared?
It was proportionally shorter. That being said, I think that game still lasted like a week or so.
Yeah, it's still fairly long, in fairness. I think our longest is like, in competitive players, maybe in the 2-hour mark somewhere, and then longest in like pubs I've seen is maybe 3 hours 20 at the highest level.
I have seen a 4.5 hour long, I think it was Mountain Pass Steam game, and I actually ended up casting it.
Yeah.
One player gathered like 1 million gold because it was Mountain Pass with million towers and walls in the middle, and like one team had an Abbasid player with 100 traders, and he ended up getting like 1 million gold or something by the end of the game.
Can I just say that I would love to see more of that element actually coming into fruition in the coming months for Age of Empires around team games, like unique interactions between civs. I played a lot of Dawn of War as a kid. It's another Relic game, and I loved that. They had very unique behaviors. Like, for example, one civ could tap their buildings and they passively build. You could do that to teammates' buildings. And it opened up layers, right? It was like you could draft a team, and the civs you picked like had a deeper meaning than they do this unit good or that unit good. There were complementary elements, and I love the idea of like the complementary elements we can already have with thinking about things like yams, attack speed, arrows, whatever. But the more I say these things out loud, the more Mongol things I'm saying. Maybe I'm just asking for more civs that are kind of unique or as powerful as the Mongols, but it is an element that I'm keeping an eye on as we move forward, not just in terms of like the maps we come up with, but I'd actually love to see if we start getting like custom civs created from modders and some of them get taken forward and developed into full things in the normal game.
That would be very interesting to look at for sure. Now, looking at this game over here, we haven't been talking about it because there wasn't really much happening. We had a bit of skirmishes in between archers and spearmen, but you see that pond, that is essentially acting to a certain extent as a natural barrier, slowing down the advance of each player towards the enemy. You see, ecos are still relatively comparable, slight edge to LucifroN in that department. On the other hand, we are seeing lancers being added by both players, some crossbows in the mix for Kasva, but it's definitely one of the slower paced scenarios over here. Tower rush now coming in here for LucifroN. That should not go up.
The shivs are out. That is not going up, Lidakor. They're gone. He does cancel it before he gets torched, but interesting detail on the defense there as well. Kasva used the defense arrow instead of the attack speed arrow. I think he would have killed the Lancers had he chosen the attack speed. I wonder if that was actually just a misclick, because there wasn't that much reason to use the armor arrow instead, especially when you consider you can't buff up villagers.
Yeah, you usually go for the defense arrow when you're taking engagements because you want to make sure you keep as many units alive as possible, but as you pointed out, in that scenario, the attack speed arrow would have made a little more sense, so part of that could just be the fact that, you know, your reflexes dictate that you just... When you start taking engagements, you quickly press the defense arrow button. So, you know, maybe he looked at it and said, okay, battle, defense arrow, boom. And like by the time he may have realized that, oh shoot, it would have been more beneficial to have the attack speed arrow, it was a little too late. Sometimes it happens, it's not a big deal.
Did Kasva not cancel that outpost that he hadn't constructed? I don't think he did. So he lost 100 wood and his opponent got paid 15. We haven't really talked about LucifroN's outpost rush on the west side and how it's fully like enveloped. It is really uncomfortable because now LucifroN has to, like, he has a direct target at the front of Kasva's base. He has to play eco on the north side. But just something to kind of come over with the generation, because we talked about the initial spawns of stone and gold where I guess in some ways it was balanced, but it was balanced on different resources. Other things to look at here, really like the boars and the relic placements. Like, it gets rid of the just boar rushes as a cheesy strategy. The golden center is nice. Like, overall, I still feel like a sacred site would fit in nicely on this central island. But maybe that was a choice design move, right? Like, they didn't want to give additional value to the central island, considering this is probably the best example of how important the central island is, because we're in a Mongol mirror. And if there's one resource that matters a lot at this stage in the game, it is gold. And right now, Kasva is the only one exploiting this.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you're right about the fact that the map is very well distributed when it comes to the important key resources. So the boars are in the corners, gold is in the middle, sacred sites also in the corners, relics spread out very well. So every single part of the map has some sort of strategic importance for at least some specific civilizations, and it's actually very nice to take a look at. And as you pointed out, Kasva right now is the only player with access to gold in the middle.
And LucifroN, the eco he built up is going to be shrinking heavily here. That was a nice strike, and that's going to deny a lot of equity. Like, you can see he just pinned against the side here. Won't be chased deeper because Kasva, he hasn't got the Yam here, so if he's mispositioned, he might just get ran through by the Lancers. Lancer count is increasing quickly, but Kasva, he sidestepped. Instead of doubling down on crossbows, you can see the spears now coming out. And right now, LucifroN doesn't have the answer. He doesn't actually have the infrastructure to counter out that unit type.
And Kasva is playing for resource control here. Now, you might be asking yourself the question, why is Kasva not playing more aggressive? It's because he doesn't need to. He's playing for gold starvation, and his army is also way less gold intensive as LucifroN's one. But here's the war junk, and that's where this dynamic comes into play. Suddenly, that big boy could easily wipe out half of Kasva's army, so Kasva's gonna need some springboards to deal with that.
And Kasva doesn't have siege engineering improved yet, right? He hasn't even got a, like, look at it. He hasn't got a blacksmith. Neither of them have a blacksmith yet. And LucifroN just beats him the punchline. And look at the follow-up as well. LucifroN already has a siege workshop. Goes to the trebuchet, will be able to beat him into the spring walls. Kasva is now 1.5 miles behind Lucy. And he's getting aggressive straight away. This war junk should be heading all the way around. Can't get too close due to the outposts, but it can get close enough to possibly shut down the step readout temporarily.
It's a very high upside, but very risky play here from LucifroN, because as you point out, that war junk is really powerful, but once springboards come into play, suddenly they can't do anything against them. Springboards will just pick them off, and those ships are very expensive. So if you're LucifroN and you're playing with war junks over here, you really have to be careful not to lose them, because they are just an insane amount of resources going down the drain if you lose them to springboards.
Right in, LucifroN trying to build up an eco lead again after he lost his big eco lead via the fishing. And a multi-pronged assault here. Multiple sides to the villages. Where they go? They go for the sheep. Uh-oh. LucifroN, he hasn't gone for it just yet. He's finally going to turn towards them.
Oh.
And I don't think there's any textiles here.
Oh,
That
that's
must be
gonna hurt.
Surely he has textiles. There's no way he doesn't with the amount of the tank in there, but it's still gonna hurt. He's
Yeah,
trying
it's
to react
gonna
the
hurt
army
big
now.
time.
Ouch, yeah, no textiles. I'm surprised he only lost 3 there. But overall, still a problem because it's idle eco and the pressure's starting to mount because there's all a distraction. Remember, LucifroN built the trebuchet already, so now he's starting to pressure the central base while forcing your whole army to defend at home.
And his blacksmith might actually get denied over here if the Lancer is able to get the kill on the villager. And as you said, there's not a single blacksmith here, which means you can't go for improved siege engineering to get yourself some springolds. You see, it looks like the Lancer got picked off, so blacksmith finally becoming a reality for Kasva. But is it coming too late? Because now LucifroN, he is stepping up when it comes to the level of aggression.
Yeah, he's actually fighting on 3 different fronts, and that means Kasva's defending on 3 different fronts. Worst case scenario, and LucifroN, I love what he does here. He doubles hit down, he dips his hand in the cookie jar again. He wants bigger economical exploit here because Kasva can't go aggressive. Think about what Kasva's composition is here. When you build infantry only, you don't control the midfield, so LucifroN doesn't feel threatened about being raided in his own base unless he throws his entire army away.
And it's a very nice dynamic right now, because you do have that war chunk out there that cannot be destroyed by Kasva right now until he gets a springald, but he's also struggling to get himself that springald.
Yeah, it's tough.
Oh no, the
villagers!
villagers!
Keep the war junk back. Wait, what? No, Kasva! There's no sheep
Oh
here, they're
no!
idle! Sir, have you noticed a slight problem in your base recently? Oh my god, he's so busy fighting in the center because he just went on towards the war junk of the fishing fleet. Even if you killed the fishing boats of LucifroN, think about what you were going to lose back here. It's a disaster for Kasva.
It's a disaster for him, and that is what that war junk is able to accomplish. It gives a buffer for LucifroN to prevent the enemies from breaking into his base, and he can use the rest of his army to just launch an attack against Kasva's base, and Kasva still didn't notice.
Again. Lidakor, I'm getting worried now. I mean, the war junk, it's taking so long to kill as well. I think it's paid for itself at this stage. He'll finally pull villagers back, but right now, if I'm Kasva, I'm clicking through my base and going, I swear I left a bunch of sheep gatherers back here. Wait, where did they go? Oh dear, now the wraparound is coming in on the side. The horseman is still just perplexing issues for Kasva, and if he doesn't find a way to now put a dent at LucifroN's base in the next 3 minutes, he's just going to get outboomed. LucifroN, the only issue I'd say I have with him right now is he's holding a lot of gold, and that's slowing down his production rate. Once he sorts that, the beast is fully unleashed.
And you see now the horsemen are coming in to harass those villagers in the middle as well. Kasva not only did lose a bunch of villagers, he also has a lot of idle time. 1/3 of his eco is essentially idle, and at this point LucifroN can afford to throw away some horsemen like that, especially because he's now on 2 TCs, so his eco is much better than Kasva's one. He can afford to lose some units like that for the sake of just further damaging Kasva's eco, and Kasva is actually on 0 food per minute, so soon he's also going to start, in quotation marks, losing villagers, because he won't be making any, and that's the easiest way to lose eco compared to your opponent, just not make any villagers.
How do you make new villagers?
You breed them.
So when a mommy villager and a daddy villager... But why do they need so much meat? I've never understood that part. It's not milk, it's giant lumps of ham. I just want you to try to visualize this for the moment. You've got a 2-year-old, they're playing in a little playpen, and you just throw a giant lump of ham in, and that's the food for the day.
I mean, the kid is probably hungry. I mean, you know, it's a body that's still growing. I mean, if you think about it, that would basically mean that a kid is eating 50 food, which is the equivalent of what, essentially 1/3 of what a horse and an adult would eat for a night.
Yeah, that's my favorite part, by the way, is a human very hard to raise. My favorite part is when you look at very expensive units and you just go ooh, man at arms cost 100 food, but a horseman costs 100 food as well. How fat are these man at arms? I don't think they're protected by actual armor. They're protected by the meat on their body.
Especially for the English with the armor clad, that's going to add some extra pierce armor for sure.
Yeah, under that layer, it's not just extra leather clad or something. It's simply just extra layers to my belly.
Oh man, Spearman now breaking out though.
Wait, he's fighting. He's actually fighting him. He's all in him. He's like, okay, you want this? It's only spears. I don't care.
Archer number is increasing for LucifroN. He's got some springboards out there as well, so if Kasva decides
Yeah.
to go for ships, he can immediately snipe them with the springboards. Well, he only has one, so it takes a couple of shots, but those springboards, those will also be good against ships, but more importantly, against that one traction trebuchet that's right now shutting LucifroN's base. I think if LucifroN takes a good fight over here, he's gonna take the game.
Yeah, rush in now, trying to target out the trap being built up. Baits him towards his defenses here as he backs away. Archers are going to start to pull his spears, get on top of him, but baits him in. He's torching instead of actually stabbing. The Warjunk is waiting. You're getting very close to his territory, which is why Kaz is backing up. And, you know, in this important moment, this critical moment, Lidakor, my question to you is, if it takes 50 food to grow a villager, like, what are they doing in the Abbasid Empire? Like, are they starving their children? Like, we're back on this discussion.
It's vegetarian diet. No, it's a veggie diet. They're only eating berries.
I just imagine they're malnourished, like, more than anything else. The worst part is, like, could you imagine, like, empire you live in there? Like, they actually get more berries than everyone else, and yet you feed less to your people. That's just cruel. Oh. And this is beginning to look a bit cruel, because I'm struggling to see the way that Kaz can fully recover, because while this fight is going on, LucifroN is just churning the gold. It's never ending. The Warjunk is on patrol. The siege is starting to wheel out. It's double springald in the field now.
Yeah, and LucifroN has just so much more eco. Like, it's 76 versus 48, and sure thing, you can do some damage here to LucifroN. Kasva's only hope might be denying gold, but LucifroN also picked up some relics, so it's not that bad for him, although some of those villagers are actually idle here for Lucy. Wait a second, he's got 30 idols. Wait a minute, this might not be over yet, actually.
Is he garrisoned? Did he accidentally garrison a TC? This feels very weird right now. Oh, he hasn't got enough sheep. He hasn't got enough sheep.
Ooh,
oh, well,
no.
Okay, look at the
Those
upside,
might be lumberjacks.
fans. I think it's also the sheep, but look at the upside, LucifroN fans. When Kasva had got enough sheep, Mongols came and ate the people instead. But this time around, at least they're just on a coffee break. They're not dying.
Oh man, that Springald Tower is still helping out a lot, but now you have some Manganos out there, and suddenly LucifroN lost a bunch of villagers. He's got some cavalry looping around, though. I think he's hitting the gold mine of Kasva, and that could be a great way to just make sure that that villager difference remains the same. He's also committing a lot of villagers to repairing the tower. He knows how important it is, and once again, the horsemen swoop in for a kill.
Folks, Kasva has a blind spot, and it's on his TC. Somehow he finds his way back there to click to build more villages, but look, you can see this one's like, are you paying attention? And he's kind of, it's like a cat curious to see if the thing's still alive. It just starts paw slapping it, and when it realizes that it can have its way and just eat it, it goes in. That little birdie, that villager line back in Kasva's base is once again just going to be absolutely massacred. Oh, he finally realized, but it's too much. It's too late. GG gets called. LucifroN, 4 out of 5 games won in this custom show match.
Indeed, with that, LucifroN takes the final game over here on Golden Swamp. We have seen the upside of this map. It would be interesting to see this map with non-Mongol civilizations, though, because I think a lot of the elements we have seen in this one was very Mongol-specific. So, such a level of early aggression with all the spearmen spamming, the tower rushing. Of course, you can go for Dark Age tower rushes with other civilizations as well, but it's way less common. So, I can see this matchup playing out completely differently with different civilizations. But, you see, this map, it has its upside, especially with that dynamic between ships and land units. I just feel like this matchup was a little one-sided, especially because of that massive raid that came in. And I also felt that this map was a little passive when it comes to the central engagements in many ways. So it felt like that swamp area was a little discouraging for players to enter to. So that probably reduced the amount of mid-game aggression, probably to lower extents that we have expected.
I think it's like the Dyson H and the Mongol Mirror matchup. As far as like getting scammed on spawns goes, this had a weird kind of dynamic. We mentioned too, like the gold was better for one and the stone was better for the other. I felt like it was kind of reasonable. That didn't impact it too much, which was nice to see. I think the bigger interesting dynamic at play here to consider is this map might heavily favor Dark Age aggression, and that might just empower certain civs a bit too much. Why I say that is because of the fact that the whole water area is shallow. Most players are going to be inclined or baited in the situation to play into the docks. And if they do, then these spearmen can run across torching you. Usually one of the downsides of the Mongols when they try to deny people on docks is like, you can torch the dock, but you maybe can't stop the fishing. Well, level up, baby, because now you can chase the fisherman as well. So I think that might be something that needs to be reassessed because I think their read was perfect. Like Mongols would probably be number one on this map, especially considering in the early game, the maneuver arrow would allow you to chase down and torch the fishing boat. So that might be someone that needs some reviewing. I think overall the big thing like to tweak, first of all, I would love to see a sacred site in the center. I think that would be a cool contest point and open up a lot more Civ's flexibility. But you need to balance that because if you put too much priority on that central island, you essentially create a weird kind of pseudo king of the hill, if you will, right? Where only this one spot really matters.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. We are also very interested in what you think about this game, what you think about the map, so make sure to let us know down below in the comments what you think about this one and how you feel about the variety of civilizations that could be available, how you feel the upside or the entertainment value of this map could be. So be sure to let us know what you think about this map down below in the comments.
Yeah, and make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you see these when they go live. You get notifications. Hit the bell to be notified, and make sure you head across the Twitch side, EGC TV on Twitch, so you can catch all the action live for the next several months on the weekends when it goes live as people fight tooth and nail to make it to Red Bull Wololo Legacy. And while you're at it, why don't you let us know down below if you'd love to see more custom type events like this? Because as much as we do love seeing people play our vanilla Age of Empires 4, I have no doubt that you people have got a taste for something in the custom department, and we're looking to deliver wherever we can. So shout out to all you for watching. We'll see you in the next chapter.